Hey guys, still there. Today I have a replay for you that I used, or in which I used this Scandinavian deck. Now it says forest fighting, but it's not actually going to turn into forest fighting whatsoever, as this Scandinavian mechanized deck can also perform really nicely in towns. Now let's quickly take you through it. A couple of command vehicles, just the 113, I don't expect it to take any fire. A couple of logistics trucks, logistics helos, and a fob of course. Infantry, mostly stuffing material. So a lot of Dragonairs, a lot of Gewehrmen. Panzerskite 90, these have that very nice command vehicle, or sorry, not the command vehicle, the fire support vehicle slash transport. RBS 90 for AA, and 28 Storm Engineer 90, which can double roll in both killing tanks and killing infantry with their HE value. Support-wise, of course, the automatic, the EOTS iHawk means it's an radar guided or non-radar guided AA unit. RBS 90s to fill cheap or to cheaply fill holes in my lines. AMOS and the M109A3. Tank-wise, I don't get to pick that many good tanks. We just don't have any options in this deck. So the 103D, the 105, 1A5DK, and a 103C. Recce, KU's recon helicopter, nice and small, makes it very hard to hit. A couple of Wildcats with autocannons as well as good optics. Good optics on the M41 DK and 7 Fallschirmjäger if I need to drop those off anywhere in a helicopter. Support vehicles, IKV 105 and IKV 91. Pretty similar vehicles, it's just that this one has the 105mm gun and this one the 91. And the NM142 in case I need to deal with any tanks at a good range. Helicopters, well, if you have a deck like this, the Fennec TOW 2 is a must-have. I really like using these helicopters. And then for anti-infantry ops and or dealing with enemy helicopters, I can go after them with the Fennec 20mm. Finally, in the air tab, F-16A Block 15, ASF, 120 points, not the best ECM, but those Sparrow missiles are really nice. I found that they do quite a lot of damage, quite reliably as well. And of course, considering that these two are at elite, you have a pretty decent bonus to their accuracy. 2 MLUs to back up these things with long-range fire and forget missiles, as well as go after tanks. The Puff to deal with any radar-guided material, or the Starfighter to deal with infantry. So, this is the deck. Now, let's fire up the replay to show you what it can do. Alright, here we go. Welcome to Gunboat Diplomacy. On this map I'm working with Spect and Brer. I'm on voice comms with Spect. Brer was just pretty much a random. I don't know the guy and I hadn't had him on TeamSpeak. Anyway, I'm going to try and take over this area in Hotel. Spect is going to take the left flank, and you can see he already has a Rafale overhead to make sure that the enemy cannot drop napalm. And Brer, we coordinated through text chat that he was going to drop napalm on this specific bridge, making it so that the enemy could no longer cross that, and that would buy me a little bit of time to deploy my forces there. You can see that the enemy is fielding quite a few units here fast to make sure that we cannot land infantry, which is a really good play on their part. On our right flank, I'm defending this bridge with very few forces actually. A couple of 103D tanks, a Wildcat, and AA is completely missing. But I believe I'm bringing in one RBS 90 there. Unfortunately, I don't have this section of the river covered, and that's going to come back to bite me. Then over on the right, we have Brer, who has quite a few units set up here. HGM Lan F3s, Legionnaires, VABs of course with the transports, Mistrals. He has Mistrals there, an Alouette, and a Mistral, so he really has the coastline well defended. Now we instantly get engaged quite effectively here, and of course the enemy does not need to take the bridge. If your vehicles are amphibious, you can just float over, so this is exactly what they did. Very well played, and of course if you want to make sure that the enemy doesn't do that, you have to block off this bridge, and possibly also just put another napalm charge onto that forest, and hope for the best. Considering that the enemy is quite delayed here, I'm trying to push into this structure as soon as possible, but yeah, I just did not quite get there. can see a lot of my guys are taking fire, dying inside their transports some of the time. And unfortunately the IKV-105, while it does have decent accuracy, cannot provide fire support fast enough. I do, however, manage to capture this terrain, which makes sure that Spect can focus on the left flank here, and he already managed to cross the bridge, so he's doing a really, really good job here as always. I do have a couple of Leopard 1A5 DKs here to provide fire support for my guys up front. And of course, from this tree line you have the perfect line of sight, the perfect range of fire, so that you can deliver the damage, but they don't really have the range on you. I bring in my Starfighter to help contain this infantry unit, because it is getting a bit out of hand here, and it's just a perfect drop. I believe I lose the aircraft. No, actually I didn't lose the aircraft, I just lost a lot of Dragonaires. And now I start losing Wildcats over towards the middle of the map, because the enemy, Polia, has deployed a couple of BMP-3s here. And let me just pause this here. Look at how these things were parked. They were parked just on the river bank here, meaning they were not capable of being shot at by the units that I have over there. Probably they don't even have the range, but it's a really nice way to use the terrain features to your advancement. And of course, advance they do. These BMP-3s with their long-range Arcan, 2,800 meters, and a couple of Motostrelki that got out of them have been dropped off. They're now going to try and push across. I got my Fennec up here trying to deal damage to this tank, because this one is putting a lot of pressure on my infantry. I do get a hit on him. Fennec runs out of missiles, and you can see that it did take some damage. There's some unit over there. I just not entirely know for certain what it is. Possibly an OSA, might be a Tunguska. I fly over the Puff, no spots though. So either the radar was turned off, or it's not radar guided. And here we go. Pretty desperate defense against a whole horde of Motostrelki 90 here, with the BMPs being put very effectively in fire support mode, firing at my Leopards as well as anything else that was operating here. And we were really surprised, I gotta say, by the 4 missiles, Arcan missiles, which have an accuracy of 50%. All 4 of them missed. It's pretty rare. Now, my push over on the left is not going very well. Dragonaires are dying left, right, and center. I only got 3 left. The middle is mine for the time being, but it is not very reliable. Gewehrmen are decent infantry, but against anything that has grenade launchers or heavy armor, they're going to be in a world of hurt. So I need to try and back this situation up as quickly as possible. The thing is, I have a hard time doing that with the T-80B over there, so this thing has to go. And I cannot exactly use an aircraft to do it, because there's AA there. So this put me in a bit of an issue here. Over towards the left, Spect has taken a severe beating, and his Commando Para is pretty much the only thing that's left here, as well as 1 Fernspeyer. He's bringing in new infantry, and at the same time I'm bringing in a large column of my own infantry, just to reinforce this middle section. Now here we go, this is what I was worried about. The tanks are going to start coming up, and I have nothing left here except an automatic. The automatic nails the T-72, but is spotted for a long time, meaning that they probably have pretty decent recon over in this tree line. And it's a bit risky to keep it out here at the same position, with the radar active no less. As I'm looking at that, I'm rather ashamed of keeping the radar active for this long, because it's a huge seed magnet. Definitely a tank, providing fire support to whatever was left from the Motostrelki 90 over in these structures. And I'm offloading my infantry here, because I didn't really know what to do with it. I couldn't race across, I couldn't race over there. I could move them over here, but they were likely to get shot at anyway. So I just offloaded them here as a sort of stopgap measure. Veerman slugging it out against Motostrelkis, and a BMPT comes in. This is a big problem. I don't have any kind of response to a BMPT. You can see it did take a lot of damage, which was really fortunate, because that was just a side shot from the automatic. That was all that was. And anything else was not really going to be penetrating that BMPT. Especially once that BMP-T started turning to frontal armor. It means that this thing with 12 points of armor penetration just does not go through the front, which is 15. Now, I'm rather surprised that at this point I was still holding off these guys, but that is just about the last thing that you're going to see at the Gewehrman. 20 Spetsnaz roll in, Scratch Jets for fire support, and bye-bye Gewehrman. They served their purpose, but they just could not hold. And against 20 Spetsnaz, I cannot blame them. Talking about holding, Spect is starting to field Jaeger to fill up gaps in his infantry line here. And more accurately, the Jaeger are the line at the moment. But he was desperately needing more infantry. Especially later on in the match, we're going to have to field a lot of infantry there to keep them at bay. Now, the BMP-4s, the BMP-4s, they don't even exist. The BMP-3s that you see here managed to go after my transports, so by all means let them, because NM-135s are really cheap units, and if you want to waste missiles that are rather expensive to replace, by all means go ahead. Now, the thing that we were wondering about is what exactly Brer was up to. Because he had a formidable position over on the right, and I believe he was he using anything on the left, or no, this is all spec stuff. Okay, let's just switch to Brer. Where's he? Ah, he's providing cover units here. He has a really nice line up here to make sure we don't get flanked. But he's not actually delivering a lot of damage, and that's going to come back and haunt us a little later on. Scratchhead duking it out with my automatic, and the NM-135 automatic just says, nope, get out, and of course it does. Now I do have the state of mind to actually turn this thing off, because I did see some seed aircraft flying around every now and then. And for a long period of time, the automatic was the only AA unit that I had active. So I had a pretty weak position here. If they would have wanted to drop a few bombs on the Gewehrman here, they would have been more than capable of doing that without being punished in one way or another. Again, a big split of BMP-3s here. That means that 40 riflemen now, or 40 motor shoots to be exact, motor Strelki now joined the party here. Automatic somehow managed to dodge a lot of the missiles, those Arcans. Did blow up one of the BMPs, but I just was not going to risk that thing. The 103C joins in, hits the BMP-3, missiles fly in, and I think he managed to destroy... Yeah, he destroyed the firing vehicle. Here we go, firing at the next one. Got him. He narrowly avoids another missile. Thank you, RNG. Not sure if he can get the drop on his last BMP-3. He's lining up a shot. Didn't get it. BMP does not have a good shot. BMP's hit. Come on, one more, buddy. Nope, he missed. Got him. That's all of the BMP-3s done. Now, that was more down to luck than anything else, because 4 BMP-3s firing those Arcan missiles should have pretty reliably hit my units. But more often than not, they just completely missed. Which, I gotta say, very unfortunate for the enemy. I think it was Puglia operating those. Now, at this point, Spect is slowly moving up on the left flank. You can see he's really taken a battering, considering he only has 2 Jaegers left here and another squad of 2 there. And the enemy was fielding a lot of infantry. We got Admiral Nelson here, Puglia, and Spect realized this and he said, guys, I'm getting double teamed. I need reinforcements now. So I start to field more infantry to get ready to send him the reinforcements that he quite desperately needs so that we can start pushing into Hotel. Once you got this section, you can sort of safely put ACV there to start neutralizing their control over Hotel, meaning a +1 drip feed for us. Now I had a pretty constant air patrol with Block 15s to make sure that the enemy could not use their B5. We knew that they were operating with one. Spect says, I just don't have enough lead time. The moment that I spot that thing, it's already on top of me and it's already dropping a bomb. So what I'm doing here is keeping a pretty constant patrol of a block 15 over on the tree line, on the mountain ridge here. Reason for doing that is that this thing has very good air detection and it is constantly circling, which means that if anything comes from Juliet or India, but no, actually, yeah, you can fly in from India. If anything comes in from there, you are going to get shot at. It will be spotted. Now, we were quite surprised to see Admiral Nelson with a T-90S here. It got beautifully side-shot there by the ATGM LAN F3. And I was really rather surprised. Why would you use a T-90S there? Because Spect didn't really have any heavy armor. He had a few tanks, but mostly a lot of infantry. Meaning that the T-90 would be relegated to a support role. Which is not something that it does poorly, not at all, but it's just a really expensive way to do it. MiG-29S comes in. Unfortunately, my F-16 was just turning the other way, and I believe I do manage to get one hit, but of course that's not enough. Block 15, fired one Sparrow, is almost out of fuel. Once this thing is done, I'm going to send up the other one. In the meanwhile, I was trying to push up here to more Gewehrmen, but the reinforcements from the enemy team had by now arrived, and of course this is not going to end very well for my Gewehrmen at all. I'm losing a lot of forces, and there's not too much that I can do about that. Somebody put napalm on there. I believe it was not me. Probably the was that the F-111 that we saw? Sorry, no, it was probably Mirage fighter, Mirage bomber. Now, this BU caused me a lot of headaches because I had no idea how to counter this thing. I know there's a Tunguska somewhere nearby, so flying in a helicopter is not an option. Flying in an MLU is pretty expensive, so I did try to go for that, and remarkably the MLU made it out alive, even though being hit, did not make it out alive after taking more than one hit and still being airborne. Anyway, dealing with that thing was going to be a real issue. Now, we're firing with my AMOS on this position here to deal more damage to the infantry so that my Gewehrmen at least stand a fighting chance. And I'm putting up a smoke screen here so that this NM135 group can move up. Unfortunately, we had not really well coordinated that, which means that my forces were pretty much running right into a bunch of napalm. And moreover, I should have put a smoke screen there, because this is what happened. The BMP-3s got involved, Spats crew got involved, and of my initial 6 transports, only 1 is left, and most of my infantry has died. This was a terrible, terrible push by me. I just should have done so much better. But hey, at least we were keeping the enemy on their toes. T-80B versus a 103C. I do damage. The 103C takes another big hit. 91 accuracy versus 75. And unfortunately, my unit dies. So here comes the legendary automatic, and the automatic finishes off the T-80B. Thank you, automatic. Well done. That's, I believe, the second pretty pricey tank that he's scored. So he's doing a really good job there. Now the Gewehrmen have managed to get a hold of this position, but unless they get immediate reinforcements, they are going to be completely rolled over by the next wave of reinforcements that the enemy team is fielding. I believe I was going to field some more units to help out Spect, but that's probably going to happen later on in the game. We've still got a good 25 minutes to go. Doing some damage to the BMP-3 here, and I believe that... Actually, let's have a look at what Brer was fielding. This is what I was worried about. Brer is not fielding any frontline units. And you're going to see this reflected in the post-screen or the post-game stats. He has a lot of units fielded, but most of them are not really combat effective. And he is using an LRM, which I gotta say is not really what we need right now. Spect was running out of infantry over on the left, and had we pushed with 2 people there and myself on hotel, we would have really put the hurt on them. Because you can bet your ass that there are 3 people operating in hotel. It was basically Spect and myself against 3 of the enemy team, with 1 of ours, Brer, being in support. You can see this is exactly what I was worried about. The reinforcements are starting to arrive. 2 Gewehrmen, 6 laws. I don't see it. It is not going to end well. Fortunately, Spect's 2A4 can at least punish some of those transports, mostly before they manage to arrive. And I'm not sure why Brer decided to push in his CV right now. Maybe just to get a few points in, but it was a really risky move. Now pay special attention to this ATGM team by Spect, because these guys, they really got their money's worth. Unfortunately I cannot pull up Spect's post-game results, because of course his army, his results, but these guys have killed a ton of units. Now, of course my Gewehrmen die, so the Spetsnaz roll in. We immediately try to retreat this command group, but the Spetsnaz don't quite agree with that plan and wipe it out in less than 5 seconds. Sending up another Block 15. It popped a few flares, so we know that there is something in the lines of AA over there. And look at the type of tanks that they're fielding. 85-2s, T-72Bs, BU. They really invested a lot in tanks, which was quite fortunate for us really, because it means that the enemy probably is not fielding infantry. I mean, these tanks somehow have to be paid for, especially units like the BU. Very expensive at 180 points. Great tank, but you don't need a great tank like that against Jaeger. I mean, at this range, you can just go at them with a T-55 if you wanted to. Now I got a line of units coming in, a couple of 1A5 DKs, SREF 9040s. Of course my next fighter is patrolling here, and there it is. Now I'm spawning in the reinforcements for Spect. A lot of M113A1s with quite a few infantry inside, mostly my cheap throwaway stuff. And Spect managed to temporarily put a CV in this zone, which really helped us out here. Because again, we were slowly but steadily getting points. Luzandui pushing in, ZSD 90s with quite lethal autocannons coming in, Zanchi, and Spect really had nothing left here. A couple of Commando Para, a couple of Jaeger, 2A4, which has been heavily damaged. And of course, by now, after all the damage that it did, it's completely elite. We are lacking AA on all fronts, especially down here on the left. The Crotal is trying to get shots in the Akula and the KA-52, but in order to do that, it has to get pretty damn close. And unfortunately, we'll lose the 2A4 by Spect there. Now, my push here, of course, failed, and I'm not going to force this issue any further. I'm going to help out Spect on the left, and whatever Brer decides to do here is up to him. We just wanted to double team here to get as much power coordinated, concentrated on this sector. Those strikes that you see coming in, by the way, are my mortars, the AMOS over there. And for some reason, we still had by now 2 LRMs. Correction, 1 from Spect, 1 from Brer. And of course, these things really start to drain your FOBs. I also had a quad stack of resupply units, these Scanias, to resupply my AMOS, because AMOS only carry 84 rounds and you go through these pretty quickly. But the FOBs were draining a lot faster than I had hoped. Anyway, my first group of reinforcements is about to arrive. I offload them a bit late, but I do force those Luzanduis to move, and the Panzerski to get dropped off right next to the building where I want them to be. Of course, that's when the Luzandui jump again, nail one of the SRF 1940s. It's reversing away from the position as fast as possible. You can see that autocannon going to work. Nice amount of damage on it. suppressing the Zenshi that are trying to get out of that structure. And finally, I'm at least slightly relieving the pressure that was put on Spect here. Panzerskite against Luzanduis are doing okay, but we really need to get a lot of reinforcements here, because 2 Jaeger, 10 Commander Para, and 16 Panzerskite are not going to hold on for long. Again, the AGGM team there, perfect positioning, because they didn't quite kill any super high value units, but what they did manage to do is cut off reinforcements. They denied the enemy this route, meaning that the enemy had to go around the long way, and we were no longer at risk of taking, for example, autocannon fire or tank fire from that position. Now my reinforcement train has arrived, so I got the M113s with the Dragonairs coming in. Spect is pulling out his very, very panicked Jaeger, and, well, can you blame the guy? Legions coming in. Immediately I switch back to the Amos. They're already lighting up the Legions, because while I have a lot of Dragonairs against a bunch of Legion 90s, I'm not going to do very well. These guys with their FHJ 84, they just chew through your infantry. But fortunately, they were on the move. They were probably running into the structure. Luzanduis are now outside, but we managed to kill 9 of them before they managed to kill a few of mine. I'm also pushing up with my transports, mostly to provide fire support here. But what ended up happening was that they decided to become a magnet for autocannon fire as well as main gun fire from a T-64BM. So I should have performed a little better there. Block 15 empty. Second Block 15 also empty, because I believe we did manage to shoot down one of their aircraft there. And again, my AA in the middle is pretty downright to nothing. All I got is 1 automatic. I turned it off to prevent radar guided aircraft, so seed aircraft, to do anything against that. But they just kept flying over with aircraft, so in a bit I'm going to start bringing in some AA units to focus on the middle, which I should have really done a long time ago. Now, again, quite the pricey concentration here. T-80 UMs, T-64 BM. They were fielding a lot of incredibly expensive tanks. And once again, I don't quite understand why. Unfortunately, they managed to shoot down my Puff, and the Dragonairs are more or less holding the line. There's not too many of them left, but at least we're holding. What we didn't really have, except for 1 Gepard A2, is AA. The enemy does have AA, and that's why we're not exactly fielding any of these TOW2 Fenix, because I would love to go hunting for these tanks, but it's just too risky at this stage. Seed comes in, nails the only AA unit that we have left, and as I was trying to go after these 80 UMs, my MLU managed to shoot down a 912 pretty much on the way out. It was no longer engaged, but somehow it managed to shoot down one of those before being, or without being shot down itself. That one actually survived. Leopard 2A4 took a battering here, down to 2 hit points. And we're trying now to jump to this tree line here. But jumping to that tree line, even if it's just crossing the road slightly, turns out to be a deadly mistake. Especially with 3 very heavy tanks over on the left. They're providing fire support for their own Zenshi. Of course, a 1A5 is not really going to perform anything against these monsters. So Spect buys a Leopard 2A5, and this one's going to be quite significant for the rest of the battle. This thing killed a lot of these high-value tanks. Rafale comes in, goes after the 912B. Unfortunately, sudden death. Possibly the MiG-912, sorry, the MiG-25 PD got another shot in. But what he did manage to pull off, I believe, was neutralize most of those high-value tanks. Yeah, both ADUMs died. So that was really, really nice. Made it that we could now start to slowly push up. And of course I got 1 Dragonair here. Such a frail position. So the AMOs are smoking the position right now, allowing my Gewehrmen to push up quite a bit safer. And you could argue that I should have reinforced this group. Yeah, probably. Probably, but I was just trying to get as much terrain as possible so that we could start bringing a CV here. Because while we were at 93 points versus 44, and the game did have 12 minutes left, it was by no means a guaranteed win. Bringing in more reinforcements here. Again, more Gewehrmen with an M72 Law that does 13 armor penetration at a range of 500 meters, with barely any chance to hit at 30%. Well, let's just say that T-72BU was a real problem. Leopard 1A5 DK had a perfect firing position here to deal with the loose Anduis, and I'm calling in quite a few more to help out with covering this reinforcement route. Because even though these HGMs were doing a fine job, you don't really need to spend 26 armor penetration on a transport. The 1A5 DK is perfect for the job. Anyway, I'm getting completely pushed out of this position, but we still have the slight edge of Hotel here, and Brer is doing a good job moving up to the middle. Spect was getting a touch annoyed here. He told Brer to start moving up his CV, which he did, and we finally make it back to +1, but it's a long and very hard fought battle. My TOW-2s, I believe both got shot down by a Tunguska here. The Tunguska was not quite being micromanaged. I believe that the AMOS are now driving into a position to deal more damage to them. CV got wiped out instantly. By the amount of fire coming in, I would say that that's a couple of mortars pummeling it into the ground. And one fob is completely down. The second fob is also completely down, which means that these long-range MLRS, let's see what are they even firing at? Firing at the structure there. See, this is something I don't quite understand. They were firing at the structure here, which is all well and good if you have anything that can push up and into that. I was completely focused on the left flank. Brer didn't have any guys to push in either, so he was basically just wasting a lot of MLRS fire on these structures. MLRS is a weapon that is used to soften guys up before you push in. And why he was just firing randomly at structures, I don't know. Because it's Conquest. If you do such a thing in Destruction, it's barely going to get you any kind of result. If you do something like this in Conquest, it's just a big waste of supplies. My AMOS take a bit of fire, a bit of counter battery there, and this is when I'm really happy about that 4 frontal and 3 side armor that they have. Because it allowed these things to survive. Again, Specs parked his P4 PC in here, so we get another command vehicle. We're again at +1, but they, of course, have a pretty good idea of where our CV is, and they're coming to get it. 4 T64 BMs, 1 T80U comes in, and we really don't have any good countermeasure. Of course, we've got one Leopard 2A5. I believe it does manage to do quite a bit of damage. It goes over the T64 BM here. Anything else is really quite desperate. It manages to kill that. My autocannons come in to try and help out against the Zanshi, but of course get instantly wiped out by the tanks. No surprise there. Dragonairs trying to hold out desperately against a few more tanks coming in here. And again, I should have brought in my Storm Engineers quite early on, because those with the Erics would have made short work of these tanks. Another kill, MLU comes in, pops the T80U that was operating pretty much between our two lines here. And again, the MLU manages to make it out alive. But that's not the end of it, because we still have 3 T64 BMs operating here. Really dangerous units, and we don't quite have an answer. The 1A5 DKs that I brought in to reinforce this position all got wiped out, probably by the combined forces of the Akula and the 64 BM. And Spect is now bringing in Panzer Grenadier 90 from Mortar 2. Trying to get these guys reinforcements and trying to keep them at bay. Leopard 2A5 took a massive beating here. But again, it did manage to neutralize one more T-64 BM. This is when the T-64 BMs come in for the kill, which is really not what they should have done. Because the closer they get to the Panzer Grenadier 90. And the last missile that wiped him out was my two Fennec TOW 2s working in tandem, nailing them just before the Panzer Grenadiers get shot at. The Leopard 2A5, it may look like it's out in the open, but it's actually pretty well covered. Because the only line of sight that the enemy has is between these structures and possibly there. Which means that the Leopard 2A5 gets a bit of a breather. And we need to start fixing that thing up. In order to do that, I bring in a couple of HKP-4As to get that tank going as fast as possible. Because this is really the only thing we have at long range to deal with other tanks. My own forces really are not capable of going after those. Bit of a slogfight here between the KA-52 and the Roland. Roland wins. There's still the Tunguska that already quite pummeled surviving. Unfortunately, I believe we don't quite get him. Let's see if the 2A5 manages to get a good shot into him. Come on, 2A5, make the count. No, we lose line of sight. There he is. Come on. No, Spec decides against it and seems to start pulling this tank out. Actually, what? Why is it reversing like that? This is really curious. The tank... Whoa! MiG-27 comes in, nails the 2A5. Gets hit by my combined EOTS Ihawk over on that section and there. And possibly the Crotal from Brer over here. Now, we are currently no longer getting points because they managed to neutralize Echo. So we said, okay, the CV must be somewhere here. They somehow snuck in a CV and kept it covered through the structures there. So Spect comes in with a bombing run, tries to get the position where we expect the CV to be. Did not get the kill. They probably saw that CV, or sorry, saw the bomber coming. And again, they managed to keep the zone under our control. There, neutralized it again. So we were getting quite curious as to where it was. And my bombers were not really in a good position to help out here, because there was a lot of AA on this flank. But what I do have is my AMOS. AMOS still carry a few rounds, 67 currently. And Spec now marks a couple more units that are operating here. 2A5 took another big hit. This is a new 2A5, by the way. It's going to have to get repaired by my HK4Ps. Or sorry, HKP4As. And still, we need to find that CV. So I'm flying in a Cayuse as well as an HKP4C with a couple of recon guys inside. Trying to get the line of sight on this unit, because by the way that it's moving about, we're still not quite sure if it's infantry or a vehicle. Infantry would be easier to kill, a vehicle would be more maneuverable. So in that way, it would be, let's say, easier to kill. There it is. Infantry. Really, really great aggressive play here by Admiral Nelson. He probably realized he got spotted by the Cayuse. He was moving them away, even just slightly. And again, they're still spotted. Let's see, the mortars... Yeah, the AMOS are lighting up. Trying to get the kill on the command unit here. Let's switch it to neutral. They're intentionally not putting it inside a structure, because that would mean they are not as fast to move around and they are in a more predictable position. But still, really nice and aggressive play there. AMOS nail it, and we again have a +1. Volkskomjäger got dropped off by the helo here. Flying around with a puff, because I know that there's quite a bit of radar-guided AA moving in there. And we do see quite a few more quite dangerous units here. Yet another BU is joining this position. And not just that, there's quite a few more tanks operating there. So we were expecting a final offensive. How do you prepare for a final offensive by a lot of tanks? Well, basically, you make sure that you have attack helicopters, you have either your own tanks or tank killers which are airborne, possibly in the form of just airplanes, or you get infantry. I decided to go with the last option, the infantry. So what you see coming in here is a whole train of storm engineers with Eric's launchers. It's going to take them a while to get there, and I really hope that the enemy does not push before they do. If I can get my guys into a position along the Panzer Grenadiers and the Jaeger that you see over on the left, and they do push, that's when we have a pretty decent chance of keeping the guys alive and keeping those tanks off of us. The one thing is that my storm engineers have a range of 1,000. Now I unfortunately lose the automatic there, but a lot of response fire goes in and the Fireball goes down. Sorry, my Block 15s tried to come after that aircraft, but it was already gone by the time we got there. Spect now decided to go heavy on the defense here, and he put a Leopard 2 command tank in here. Of course, this thing is way more difficult to kill than any kind of lightly armored CV or a command infantry. And it was getting really difficult for the enemy to push us out of this position. Still, no surrenders. No way that these guys were going to let us go down easy. Or were going to let us off easy. Spect is bringing in any kind of tank that he can, because he already spotted that push coming in. We can see it every now and then. And here we go. T-64s of all types and varieties are crossing the field. Let's just switch this to neutral. T-64 BMs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tanks are coming at us. 1 command unit, and a T-72 BU, and a couple of gunships. So this is going to be quite fun to kill. The only AA that we have is the RBS-90 that I have over here. And my storm engineers are starting to arrive. Get shot at, or shoot down another aircraft there. Spec said, okay, if you can shoot down these helicopters, we have a pretty good chance of getting the Leopard 2A5 out there and start playing with that T-64 BMs. Unfortunately, for some reason, the RBS-90 just could not both get a shot, so I only have one squad. I relocate them to a next an adjacent structure to try and get a shot at them. The Mi-24Ps get away. Of course, they're empty, but we don't know that. And here we go. T-64 BMs coming in close, Jaegers engaging them, Storm Engineers pushing forward and engaging. First kill. Leopard 2A5 joining in. Storm Engineers are down to one guy. Leopard 2A5 gets the kill. Next group of Storm Engineers ready to line up. Kill. Side shot. T-64 BM down. Next group is joining the fight here. A third group joining in. Next missile goes in. Couple of hits on the T-64 BM, basically softening them up for the kill by the Leopard 2A5. Few more. There goes the infantry. Another BM, very heavily damaged. Storm Engineers are quite worried, impacting their accuracy. And again, the enemy is forced to retreat. So, that was one really, really intense conquest game. I did quite well, actually. I did a lot better than I'd expected. I thought I was going to be feeding a lot that match, but it turned out to be quite okay. Spect, of course, as you have come to expect of him, doing extremely well, getting a very nice amount of kill death. And Brer made negative by only 6 points. But still, if he'd had pushed up more aggressively, and he'd had been more forthcoming in the units that he would have started fielding, I think we would have done a bit better there. Polya made positive, YK93 did not quite make positive, and same for Admiral Nelson. Of course, it's a zero-sum game. If someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. Still though, nothing but respect for these guys, because they played extremely well, gave us a really, really hard time. And this is exactly what we had expected based on the stats that they have. So, I hope you enjoyed that gameplay. If you want to use my deck, the description has the deck code. When you copy it, make sure there are no dashes in the deck code. Because usually what happens is when you copy it and you paste it in Wargame, there are some dashes. Delete those and the deck code will work. Just please listen to that and stop asking why is the deck code not working, because I always get comments like that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. For us, it was definitely enjoyable, and just please take any kind of strategy that you have seen here, copy it to your own use, and enjoy Wargame. Thank you for watching. See you next video.